Our next speaker is here. Her talk is about how to communicate effectively with your healthcare team. And Chris Yedinak is a family nurse practitioner and clinical research trials coordinator who oversees patient care at OHSU, Northwest Pituitary Center. She was educated in Sydney, Australia. Her research includes pituitary pathology and Cushing's disease. For the last 5 years, she has specialized in neuroendocrine testing and pre- and post-operative care of patients with neuroendocrine and pituitary diseases. With that, Chris.
All right, thanks, Jill. It's great to be here. So there's a slight change in that. You know, I'm actually a doctor of nursing practice and I've been practicing with pituitary patients, all of them. You know, adrenal patients, patients with acromegaly for over 20-something years, and we kind of start to say, right, let's just drop off a few years, right? We all start to get a little gray around the edges. And so I did do some testing many years ago. I've been working with clinical trials for a long time, so we've had the opportunity to work with a lot of your supporters, which have been, it's been a wonderful experience. But I've learned so much from my patients. And I think that I applaud you totally for being here today, and we'll talk about why as we go through this. And if I can work this okay. So I kind of believe in what I call medical mutuality. So I'm an advocate for you finding the person that you can work with best. That's a lot easier in a big village or a city, and it's less available to a lot of people in rural areas. And I know that that's a huge problem. So I've also been a supporter recently, and will continue to do that, to develop courses for nurse practitioners. As a doctor of nursing practice, I think it's really important to get more practitioners out there that are really available in the communities that are underserved, so that you can have access to people that are in your local area. But you have to be able to kind of meld with that person. What you have is a collaboration. What you have is a relationship. And what you need to develop is a long-term relationship. Some of my patients I have literally been seeing for 23 years. So some of my patients' kids think I'm grandma. I feel like they're grandma sometimes, which is great. I just love it. Extended family. So that's the kind of relationship I think that's really important. You've got to be able to talk to your provider. You've got to be able to have them listen, understand you. So there's a few things, and probably a lot of you do all these already, but I think it's worth going over and maybe adding to that regimen a little bit as we go through this, hopefully. So the important thing to remember is this is your life. It's not the provider's life. This is yours. And I think that that show that we saw many years ago was very pertinent to what everybody with any kind of a rare disease experiences. You have to be your own self-care expert. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. But you need to develop a team of resource people for that care. Your endocrinologist, your neurosurgeon, somebody that's a nutritionist. You need a mental health expert, as we've heard today. You need somebody that understands medicine, so a pharmacist that can help you. Somebody that can help you with internet resources. And you need the support of each other, because you're all going through this in a different way. Understanding what your illness is and what's happening in your body is paramount. So give yourselves a clap, because I think that all those people today that came for the very first time, this is a great step. You know, some of these people that I've talked to today, have only been diagnosed for less than a year or just, shortly longer than a year. This is the step that you need to take. Coming to conferences like this, and thank you, Jill, because Jill is a wonderful support person and can connect you with people in your local area, with providers in your local area, with people that have worked successfully with people in your local area, or beyond as you need it, okay? So use those resources, develop your team. This is why it's important. There's 8,760 hours in a year, right? 17.4 minutes is usually what's spent in any one visit with your endocrinologist or your PCP. Sometimes you get a lot less. You normally only get about 5.3 minutes on average of talk time. It sounds a little extreme, but I think some people get a little bit more than others because they take it, right? Some people get less than others because the provider is just not home today, okay? So, but that's an average by recent studies. On average, you do about 6 visits a year with a provider. Oops, hang on. Sorry, how do I go back? Oh, the time then, ultimately, that you spend in self-care is 8,759.5 hours per year, okay? So who's doing the majority of your care? You are. So it's important to get your team together, know where your resources are, and know how to use them most effectively. So the last 3 years have taught us a heck of a lot, some of which we didn't want to learn. But one of the things that's blossomed in the last 3 years are different types of connecting with your providers. So telemedicine has become a big issue, and I just wanted to clear up a little bit of the terminology between those two because it's a bit confusing. So there's telehealth and there's telemedicine. And they talk about them interchangeably, but they're really a little bit different. Telehealth is kind of the big umbrella in a sense, and that's where you could have a continuous glucose monitor that connects with your provider. It feeds them information. You could have a continuous monitor for your heart, for your blood pressure, feeds them information. So it's very important that you understand if you're using that and how to use that type of connection. Telehealth also includes telephone calls from your provider. And a lot of follow-up now is done simply by the telephone, and you can be reached by telephone and by mobile phones wherever you are. I have done interviews with patients that are fishing in the Willamette, because I'm from Oregon, in the Willamette River. I have done interviews with people that have been in the middle of a riot, so you can contact your providers by tele whenever, okay? It doesn't have to be a physical space, which is kind of nice. Telemedicine, per se, then, is really that face-to-face that you get on a video. And not everybody's got access to video. So video may be a choice for some people and not for others. So now we have a bunch of choices in how we schedule. So it's important to understand what it is that you want out of your visit and what is the best type of schedule for you to ask for, okay? So you can do a telephone visit. And you get a lot out of a telephone visit. You just don't see the provider. The provider doesn't see you. But sometimes you just want an IGF-1 check. You just want to know, okay, this lab is a bit skewy. Okay, what are we going to do now? Are we going to change the plan? Okay? And you don't have anything else specific to talk about. And then there's that virtual visit. I kind of like the virtual visits. There's lots of advantages, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute, but you don't have that feeling that the person isn't there. You just don't have that connection in some respects. It's a little bit harder to get a full physical, but you can. If you use a cell phone, it's amazing. I can see abdominal striae, I can get you to push on your leg and see if you've got swelling, you know, I can check your visual fields. There's an amazing amount that you can still do on a video. And so it can be very, very useful. The other thing, often it's used in between your visits, just for kind of questions. Now, some institutions are charging for a MyChart type visit, depending on what it is that you're asking for. But you can ask quick questions on this. You can get quick answers on this. This is a way of just connecting with your provider in between your visits. And of course, there's the face-to-face. And I always love it when I see my patients face-to-face, but it's often very challenging. And there's lots of pluses and minuses. This is kind of a busy slide, but there's really a lot of pluses and minuses, so choose what is that's most appropriate to you. I like the telehealth, and I like the virtual health because, you know, the mums are busy, the dads are working, you don't want to take off, mums are working, whatever. You don't want to take off work, you've got a long way to go to travel, you don't want to travel, you've got mobility problems, it's really hard. You know, you don't have transportation, so, you know, figure out which is what it is that's best for you with the pros and cons of that particular type of scheduling. And then when you usually you talk to the scheduler, because the provider usually doesn't do their own scheduling. When you talk to that person, say to them, hey, this is my preference. When can I get in for an X, Y, or Z? The most important thing as you go to your provider is to be focused, okay? You want your visit to be focused, and you want the provider to be focused on you, okay? So to do that, the first thing is to be prepared. This is your friend, okay? You carry it with you. You know, a lot of people sleep with them. I don't recommend that. But you can record a lot of stuff on that phone. As you're going through, you think of something, you've got your little list, write it down, okay? This is a new symptom. I had it today, how severe it was, what changed, what started it, what stopped it. You've got a little note in here, and then you can then, at the end of whatever period is until you see your provider, you can look at that. You can go back, you can make a composition out of it, you can pick out what it is that's really happening. This went away, so I'm not going to worry about this. Okay, this is gone. Or this is better, this is worse, I need some help with this, okay? Then you can start your checklist. What is it that I really want to talk about in this visit? And usually we talk about keep it to the biggest problems, the biggest 3 problems if you can. So make your checklist, sort it out, make sure it's on your phone, because you'll take that to your visit and you've got it there, and you don't forget the list that you made, that you put on the refrigerator, okay? So avoid coming with the bundle, okay? We've all got a bundle, but really what is it that's most important, and what's affecting your life most importantly right at the moment, okay? Is this something that the endocrinologist can deal with? Is this something that your primary care can deal with? Is this something that you need to go to a GI specialist for? Think about that. And if you need help with that, you know, I might just shoot a little note on the MyChart or whatever that electronic medical system happens to be that your institution or your provider deals with, and say, hey, look, I've got these symptoms. Are these belonging to my endocrinologist, or should I talk about this with somebody else? And often that's scanned through by the nurse in the clinic, and they'll give you a pretty good idea as to whether this can be attended to in that session with your endocrinologist. So then you're focused on things that the endocrinologist can work on, can do, okay? Or the endocrine provider, whoever it may, because it may be me, and I'll say, I really appreciate that, okay? So gather all your medical information in one spot. List your symptoms and keep that diary. Use your phone, okay? What's different, what's worse, what's better, etc. And then write down your specific questions. So at the end of this little checklist, know what you want to ask when you walk into the office, okay? If you have something that's wonderful or much, much better, tell them, okay? It's really nice to hear, hey, you know, we did this last time, my headaches got better, my joint pains got better. Takes 2 seconds, and it gives the feedback that's really very important to the provider, because remember what the provider hears most of the time. It's that big bundle, okay, of problems. And when somebody comes in and says, you know, that worked, then it's very encouraging for everybody, okay? And I know that I can try that again on the next patient as well, so. Brief, focused opening statement. It's really, from studies, it seems like the first statement that you make to the endocrinology team or to your provider, that's the one that they hear very clearly. Only 23% of the rest of the stuff that you talk about actually gets through. So make the first thing the most important thing and the thing that's your biggest problem. Make sure you know what you want to get out of that appointment, okay? What's your goal to walk away with? What plan do you want to go through those 8,764 hours of the rest of the year, okay? Because this is your care that you're talking about. This is your plan. So you can start when you're thinking about questions, you know, put it in the what, where, why, who format, if that's helpful to you. But I like this little statement that says, don't ruin today by reliving yesterday's problems, okay? I think that it's very important to have, okay, I know what I've done, okay? This is what I've done, it hasn't worked. So what's the future? Where am I going from here? You can complain all you like about what's past, but none of us can change what's past. We'd love to, can't change that. So move forward. And then what really is achievable? What are your expectations for this visit? What are your long-term expectations, okay? I can't take the acromegaly away. We do not have the science to be able to do that. Would we love to? Absolutely. But we can't take a lot of the stuff away. That's the physical changes, the bony changes. We understand there's a lot of pain and dysfunction associated with it in many ways. But I can't take that away. So what can I fix? What are the things that are more likely to be able to be fixed? Or do I need to see somebody else, okay? I think this is a very important feature of any visit. My memory doesn't last long enough to get me to the car, okay, after I've had my visit. And then I start thinking, oh my, what did he or she say? Oh, okay. So that's me as a patient. So the other thing is to think about the provider, because he's dealing with, you know, 10, 12, 14, sometimes 20 patients in a day. So you want to make it memorable for them too. From your perspective, excuse me, I've got allergies and my nose doesn't like it. So from your perspective, it's nice, particularly in your early visits, is to take a family member or take a friend, take a scribe, somebody that can really keep paying attention to the detail stuff. Most of us tune out about 7.8 minutes, so you've already tuned out 2 or 3 times to what I've been saying. So, you know, you really do tune out. That's just what we do. Our brains try to avoid overload, and so they miss stuff. When you have an emotional component on top of that again, like somebody just says you've got a brain tumor, how much do you hear beyond the brain tumor? Now, okay, now I've found out that I have this potentially fatal problem because I'm assuming that a brain tumor is fatal because, you know, a lot of what I hear is it's fatal. So I've tuned out. My emotions have shut me down. That good old ACTH and cortisol, right? That's now gotten to the point where it's so high, I'm not hearing anything. So the scribe will be very important to you. If you don't have a scribe, again, this is your friend. There's a button on here, and if you don't know where it is, ask anybody below the age of 20, and they'll show you exactly where it is. You can record your visit. So takes up a bit of space, make sure your battery doesn't go flat in the middle of it. But once you've recorded it, make sure you tell the provider or ask the provider, is it okay? I love it when somebody records it because then I know that they can go back anytime and they can review what we said. I would like to record every visit, so use your phone as a recording device. And then you can go back home and refresh your mind if you don't have somebody that's taken notes. And even if you do, sometimes it's useful. Have a plan when you go out. And I can't emphasize that enough, so you might hear it again. Make sure you've got all your questions answered. When you first come into the visit, have your photograph taken. Let me go back again because I'm pressing buttons and I'm getting nowhere here. Hang on, try one more time. Okay. Now, 2 reasons for that. You get the picture, right? Okay. 2 reasons for that is, no, the pictures don't want to stay. One is you've got a picture for you to go back and look at over time. And I find that that's really helpful. Sometimes it's scary, right? But what you can see are the physical changes. What the provider can see are the physical changes as the treatment progresses. Now, the other reason, from a provider's perspective, is, okay, if I don't have everything down that I wanted to have down by the end, because I'm a terrible typist. I mean, I can't type it, 300 words a minute, and I would just like to type it 300, and it doesn't work, okay? And so when I go back, if I can click on your photograph, it's like, I know what we talked about. It triggers that so that it gives me a better opportunity to represent what you said better in your record so that we can carry it through long term. The second is to try and speak the language of the provider. And I know it's not your job to do that, but it's helpful if you can think about things from this perspective because that's how we're taught to chart. It's called old cart, right? Just think of the cart. Onset, location, duration. So when you're talking about your symptoms, that's the way to kind of describe them. Characteristics, what is it like? Your headaches, is it pounding? Is it sharp? Is it whatever? Is it associated with any other symptoms like nausea, vomiting, fatigue, diarrhea? Okay. Anything has worked? Did you try anything? It got it better, made it worse? And what other treatments have you tried? Have you tried any other medical treatments? So, and if you haven't, you can miss some of the things that haven't been in there because sometimes they'll ask you, but it's kind of helpful to present it in that kind of a format if you can remember. And then also go head to toe. All right, start at your head. You know, the headaches are usually often the thing that I start with because I want to know where they're at and get a good description of that. And then kind of work down from there. So you get a lot of facial symptoms you talk about, you know, your headaches, okay, you know, lessening of your, that widening of your nose, your lips maybe, your tongue, your speech is a little bit better, your jaw may be hurt less or more or whatever, okay? Or feel like you've got more gaps between your teeth. So those kinds of things. So kind of move down based on your symptomatology and your disease process, okay? All right. This is a kind of a long, kind of rambling statement that we could go on and on and on. And I tell you, I just dealt with this yesterday afternoon when I got here and did some emergency kind of visits with people. And it's like, okay, I'm trying to get what you're saying here, but be succinct, okay? See if you can get it into a little package, like translation here. Headaches are interfering with my ability to work. What are my options? Okay? So when you're thinking about what you want to say, get it in a format that's really short and sweet, as short and sweet as you can make it. Okay? Particularly when you're putting it on a MyChart message, because reading a 2-page MyChart message, because you know, oh, I ran out of space on this one, so they send another one, right? Remember, the provider is probably reading that at about 11 o'clock at night, maybe later, maybe early in the morning. Okay, so what you want is to get your message across. Be as succinct as you possibly can. Have somebody else read it. Have your spouse or your friend or whatever read it and say, hey, how can I put this? How can I make it more succinct? So take away your plan. Focus on the future. Focus on where you're going, what you want, okay? What it is that you want to end up with. And I like Dr. Google, but Dr. Google can also be very misleading. So you're out there and you're fossicking around and you find a lot of scary stuff. And it's not all true, and it's not all accurate. People in your group, Jill can tell you what's a good site. Your doctors can often refer you to really good sites. So then take it into your provider and say, this is what I saw, okay? Is this real? And have it clarified if need be, okay? I like Dr. Google, but the problem I see sometimes is that it becomes, okay, now I've learned so much about my disease, now I'm going to tell you what to do, okay? And quite honestly, that's not what you want as a resource. You don't want somebody that's just going to do whatever, okay? You want somebody that can think about your symptoms, and based on their knowledge and their experience and their training, they can direct you as to perhaps this may be safer for you, or give you better outcomes, or better quality of life, or diagnose a new illness, or whatever, okay? So try not and be the doctor. Try to use the doctor as the resource, or the provider as the resource. Be prepared. Be focused with your questions. Verify the accuracy of your site. Specifically, what it is that you want to be clarified. So in between visits, again, use your MyChart for questions, 2 or 3 questions, make it succinct. You can make another appointment, which is really cool. And sometimes if you've got a lot of questions, my staff will say to you, we're making an appointment, okay? Because that's the most efficient use of everybody's time. And then I can really clarify what questions you're asking and give you a better answer. Other thing is be patient. Because just because you had your labs done today doesn't mean to say the lab is going to do them tonight and get them onto the MyChart tomorrow. So sending a MyChart message to me right after you've walked out the door, ain't going to get anywhere, sorry. So it might be a day, 2 days for some labs. And in our lab, IGF-1 is going to take a week. ACTH is going to take a week. So understand how long that typically takes. Now, if you haven't heard from me in a week, you should have. So ask that question if you haven't heard. Get the answers again. Print out those answers. Keep a record of what those results are so that you have your own medical chart. Remember all of those hours in the year that you're doing your self-management, so you need to know what's happening. You need to be clear when you go to the next provider. This is my history, and you write it down succinctly. This is what's happened, this is what we've done, this is where I'm at, and I'm here because, okay? So, focus, be prepared, make your checklist. Don't bring the whole lot all at once, okay? I can't deal with that. Try to do what, where, why, how, and then really think about what your expectations really are, okay? Focus on tomorrow, okay? Don't relive the problems of the past. Bring a scribe, use your cell phone, important piece of equipment. Use Dr. Google, but use him wisely. And then have a plan for your future, ongoing, okay? That you're going to take through those 8,000, 800 and whatever a day. All right? Thank you for listening, and thank you, Jill, for having us here. Any quick questions?
I can tell you that I know quite a few of Chris's patients, and they love her. I mean, you are one of the best physicians that I know. And
Love you.
we appreciate